The ancient Stoics believed that we suffer not from events themselves, but from the meaning we attach to them, and in a single moment, a life can split into two, before and after. The autumn breeze carried a whisper of winter through Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood as Emily Turner stared at her phone, her trembling fingers hovering over the screen. The message that had just arrived felt like a dagger to her heart. A photo of her husband, Marcus, in an intimate embrace with someone else, sent anonymously to her email. At 35 weeks pregnant, Emily had spent the morning decorating the nursery in their craftsman home. Her hands, lovingly arranging tiny clothes and dresser drawers, now those same hands clutched her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. The timestamp on the photo read yesterday evening, when Marcus had claimed to be working late at his architectural firm. The room began to spin. Emily pressed her other hand against her swollen belly, feeling their baby's gentle kicks, a cruel reminder of the family she thought they were building together. 7 years of marriage, 3 years of trying to conceive, and countless promises of forever, all suddenly cast into doubt by a single image. A storm of disbelief and betrayal rose inside her, her heartbeat thundering against her ribs. How could something so sacred be broken so carelessly? Her breath caught in her throat, shallow and fast, as though her body, like her heart, had forgotten how to function. She needed air. Grabbing her car keys, Emily rushed out of their home, ignoring the perfectly arranged shoes in the foyer that suddenly seemed to mock their carefully constructed life. The late afternoon traffic crawled along Pine Street as tears blurred her vision. Her phone buzzed repeatedly, Marcus's name flashing on the screen, perhaps finally noticing the missed lunch they had planned to discuss the upcoming baby shower. The irony wasn't lost on her. Just this morning, she had been adding final touches to their baby registry. While Marcus had apparently been, she couldn't even complete the thought. The light ahead turned yellow, then red, but Emily's mind was elsewhere, replaying every late night at the office, every business trip, every unexplained delay. The trust they had built, brick by brick, now crumbled in her memory, each recollection poisoned with doubt. Her chest tightened with every unanswered question that had once seemed harmless. She didn't see the delivery truck running the red light until it was too late. The impact came from the passenger side, sending her car spinning across the intersection. Time seemed to slow as the airbag deployed, the sound of crushing metal and breaking glass, creating a horrific symphony. Emily's last conscious thought was of her baby, her hands instinctively moving to protect her stomach as darkness enveloped her. The wail of approaching sirens faded into the background as she slipped into unconsciousness. Hours later, she awoke to the sterile whites and beeping monitors of Harborview Medical Center. The room was dim, but she could make out Marcus's figure slumped in a chair beside her bed, his head in his hands. Before she could process his presence, the memory of the photo flooded back, followed immediately by a more urgent concern. "The baby," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Where's our baby?" Marcus's head snapped up, his face streaked with tears. The look in his eyes told her everything before the words could even leave his mouth. Their perfect future, the one they had spent years planning, had shattered in a single afternoon. The doctor's words washed over her like distant waves. Internal bleeding, emergency surgery, we did everything we could. But all Emily could focus on was the hollow feeling in her chest, the emptiness where her child had been just hours before. As consciousness faded again, pulled under by the morphine drip, Emily caught fragments of Marcus's desperate apologies, mixing with her own sobs. Their world had collapsed, and in these moments of raw grief, she couldn't tell which pain cut deeper: the loss of their child, or the betrayal that had sent her fleeing into traffic. On this fateful afternoon, 3 weeks after the accident, Emily stood in the doorway of what should have been the nursery, unable to cross the threshold. The room remained frozen in time, a testament to dreams that would never materialize. The soft yellow walls seemed to mock her with their cheerfulness, while the untouched crib sat like a monument to their loss. Marcus's footsteps echoed from downstairs, his presence in the house now feeling like an intrusion rather than comfort. The distance between them had grown into an insurmountable chasm, filled with unspoken accusations and suffocating grief. The doctors had cleared her to return home, but home felt like a foreign concept. Then, the sound of breaking glass shattered the heavy silence. Emily made her way downstairs to find Marcus standing in the kitchen, surrounded by shards of what used to be their wedding china. Their eyes met briefly before he looked away, his hands shaking as he reached for the dustpan. "Don't," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just don't." The double meaning hung in the air between them. "Don't clean up. Don't try to fix this. Don't pretend we can move past it." Marcus straightened up, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Emily? Please," he started, his voice thick with emotion. "We need to talk. About what happened. About everything." "Everything?" She let out a bitter laugh. "You mean how you were with her while I was picking out baby clothes? Or how our child died because I was too devastated by your betrayal to drive safely?" The words hit Marcus like physical blows. He gripped the kitchen counter, his knuckles turning white. "I never meant for any of this to happen. The affair. It was a mistake, and the accident." "Don't you dare," Emily cut him off, her voice sharp enough to draw blood. "Don't you dare try to separate the two. Your choices led us here, Marcus. Your decisions destroyed everything we built." Outside, rain began to fall, pattering against the windows in a steady rhythm that felt like nature's own funeral march. Emily watched as droplets traced paths down the glass, mirroring the tears she refused to shed in front of him. "I've started looking for an apartment," Marcus said, finally breaking the heavy silence. "I think we both need some space." To what?" Emily turned to face him fully. "To heal? To forgive? Do you really think there's any coming back from this?" The question lingered unanswered as thunder rolled in the distance. Marcus's phone buzzed on the counter, another message from his lawyer about divorce proceedings. The sound seemed to finalize something between them. "I loved you," Emily said, her voice softening with grief rather than anger. "I loved the life we were building, the family we were supposed to have." "I still love you," Marcus responded, reaching for her hand, but stopping short when she flinched away. "That's the tragedy of it all, isn't it?" Emily moved toward the stairs, pausing at the bottom step. "Love isn't always enough. Sometimes it's just the thing that makes betrayal cut deeper." As she climbed the stairs, Emily could hear Marcus's muffled sobs from the kitchen. Once, the sound would have broken her heart, would have sent her running back to comfort him. Now, it merely blended with the storm outside, becoming another part of the symphony of their unraveling marriage. The downtown Seattle law office of Harper & Bennett stood imposing against the morning sky. Its glass facade reflected the winter sunlight. Emily sat in her parked car, gripping the steering wheel as she stared at the building where she'd worked before taking leave to start her family. 6 months had passed since the accident, and returning felt like stepping into another life entirely. Her former office now belonged to someone else, but managing partner Jonathan Harper had immediately offered her a position when she called about coming back. "Your desk is waiting whenever you're ready," he'd said, his voice carrying a gentleness that almost broke her composure. The elevator ride to the 18th floor felt endless. Emily watched her reflection in the mirrored walls. She'd lost weight, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. Despite her careful makeup, the woman staring back at her looked like a stranger. "Emily," a warm voice greeted her as the elevator doors opened. Christina Yang, the firm's senior partner, stepped forward with a smile that held just the right balance of welcome and understanding. "We've got you set up by the window. Corner office, you'll love the view." The familiar scent of coffee and paper files filled her nostrils as Emily followed Christina through the office. Colleagues offered subtle nods of acknowledgement, mercifully avoiding the pitying look she'd grown accustomed to. The divorce papers had been filed last week, and news traveled fast in Seattle's legal circles. Her new office was larger than she expected, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. A stack of case files waited on the desk, along with a small plant, a peace lily. The card beside it read simply, "Welcome back, the team." "We've got a pro bono case I think you'd be perfect for," Christina said, placing another file on the desk. "Medical malpractice. Single mother of 2. Could use someone with your attention to detail." Emily's fingers brushed against the folder, muscle memory from years of practice kicking in. This was familiar territory, a place where logic and reason still prevailed, where chaos could be ordered into neat paragraphs and cited precedents. She took a deeper breath, letting the structured language of legal work begin to anchor her. It wasn't just a case, it was structure, purpose, control. All the things she'd been missing in the chaos of the past months. "There's one more thing," Christina added, lingering in the doorway. "We've hired a new associate, Daniel Foster. He'll be working with you on some cases. Brilliant mind. Great track record with family law." As if on cue, a tall man appeared behind Christina, carrying a laptop and wearing a warm smile. "Miss Turner, I've read your briefs on the Caldwell case from 3 years ago. Brilliant work." "Just Emily," she corrected automatically, noting how the word "miss" felt like a sharp edge against her skin. "And thank you." It was a reflex, but one that still stung. A tiny reminder that the name she used now marked both a loss and a beginning. After they left, Emily sank into her chair, allowing herself a moment to absorb the surroundings. A photo on a colleague's desk across the hall caught her eye. A happy family portrait. The sight no longer triggered tears, just a dull ache. She was learning to live with it. The ache didn't plead for attention anymore. It had settled into the quiet background hum of her existence. Opening the pro bono case file, Emily began reading. The familiar rhythm of legal work slowly enveloped her, offering a lifeline back to the person she used to be. Or perhaps she realized as she made her first note in the margin, to the person she was becoming. Someone rebuilt from grief. Not unscarred, but solid. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus's lawyer about scheduling a meeting to discuss asset division. Emily turned the phone face down, focusing instead on the case before her. For the first time in months, she felt something close to purpose stirring in her chest. 2 weeks into her return to Harper & Bennett, Emily found herself staying late, poring over depositions for her medical malpractice case. The office had emptied hours ago, leaving her alone with the gentle hum of the heating system and the sound of the cleaning crews. The solitude felt comforting rather than lonely, a stark contrast to the emptiness that had haunted her home. A knock on her doorframe startled her. Daniel Foster stood there, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up, holding 2 cups of coffee from the high-end shop downstairs. "Thought you might need this," he said, placing 1 cup on her desk. "The Rogers deposition looks brutal." Emily hesitated before accepting the coffee. "Thanks. I didn't realize anyone else was still here." "Some habits die hard," Daniel replied, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Back in Chicago, late nights were my norm. Still adjusting to the West Coast rhythm." The mention of Chicago triggered a memory. Marcus had proposed to her there during a weekend trip. Once, such memories would have sent her spiraling. Now they felt more like watching scenes from someone else's life. Distant, blurred snapshots from a version of her that no longer quite existed. She let the image pass like a train at a station. Noticed, but not boarded. "The plaintiff's medical records don't match her testimony," Emily said, steering her mind back to work. "There's a 3-month gap that could make or break our case." Daniel leaned forward, genuinely interested. "Mind if I take a look? Fresh eyes might help." For the next hour, they worked through the case details together. Daniel's approach was methodical yet innovative, finding connections she hadn't considered. His presence was professional but warm, lacking the cautious distance others maintained around her. With him, she didn't feel like a fragile artifact to be handled gently, just a colleague, sharp and capable, returning to form. "You know," Daniel said during a brief pause, "my sister went through something similar. Not the same, but she lost her baby in the 3rd trimester. Took her years to talk about it." The words hung in the air between them. Emily's hand stilled over the keyboard. The silence pressed between them, thick with understanding. It wasn't pity, just recognition, the quiet kind that didn't demand a response. "Does it get easier?" she asked, surprising herself with the question. "For her, I mean?" Daniel considered this carefully. She said, "It's like learning to live with an extra limb. At first it feels impossible, to move, to breathe. Then gradually you learn to carry it. It becomes part of who you are, but it doesn't define everything anymore." Outside the window, city lights twinkled against the darkening sky. A text message lit up Emily's phone, Marcus's name appearing briefly before the screen went dark again. The divorce proceedings were moving forward, each document requiring her signature, feeling like another nail in the coffin of her old life. She didn't flinch anymore when his name appeared, but a quiet weight still settled on her chest every time. "I should head home," Emily said, gathering her files. "Early meeting tomorrow with the client." "Let me know if you want to bounce more ideas around," Daniel offered, standing. "I've got a theory about that medical records gap." As they walked to the parking garage, their conversation shifted to lighter topics. The city's best coffee shops, terrible law school professors, the upcoming courthouse renovation that everyone dreaded. It felt normal. Perhaps the first normal conversation Emily had experienced in months. Driving home, Emily realized she had laughed during their discussion of a particularly absurd legal precedent. The sound had felt foreign in her throat, but not unwelcome, like a muscle slowly remembering how to move after too long at rest. At home, she walked past the nursery, now empty, its contents donated to a local women's shelter. The house felt different too, less like a mausoleum of broken dreams and more like a blank canvas. Whether that was progress or just resignation, she wasn't sure yet. Marcus sat in Dr. Rachel Lynn's office, watching rain streak down the windows of the Victorian home in Seattle's Queen Anne neighborhood. 8 sessions in, and the leather armchair no longer felt foreign, though comfort remained elusive. Today's session marked 2 months since signing the divorce papers, and the weight of finality pressed heavily on his shoulders. "You mentioned dreaming about the baby again," Dr. Lynn said, her voice steady and neutral. She was a woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that seemed to see through his carefully constructed walls. "It's always the same dream," Marcus responded, his voice rough. "I'm standing in the nursery, but the room keeps getting longer, like a tunnel. I can hear crying, but no matter how fast I run, I can't reach the crib." "And how does that make you feel?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "Helpless, guilty, like I deserve this endless chase as punishment." He paused, running his hands through his disheveled hair. "My colleague saw Emily yesterday at the courthouse, said she looked, well, professional, put together. Does that surprise you?" "No, yes." He struggled with the contradiction. Emily was always the stronger one, even before everything. "I think that's partly why I had the affair," Dr. Lynn finished when he trailed off. The words still felt like a punch to the gut. "I've been thinking about what you said last session, about patterns. My father, he did the same thing to my mother. I always swore I'd be different." "Sometimes we repeat patterns precisely because we're trying so hard to avoid them," Dr. Lynn observed. "Tell me about the moment you decided to pursue the relationship with your coworker." Marcus closed his eyes, forced himself to return to that first coffee meeting with Melissa. Emily was so focused on the baby, on creating this perfect family. I felt peripheral, unnecessary. Melissa made me feel needed, important. And now I understand. Emily was trying to create the family I never had, the stability I claimed I wanted. His voice cracked. I destroyed it all because I was too scared to admit I didn't know how to be the man she thought I was. Through the window, he watched a young couple hurrying through the rain, sharing an umbrella. Once, that had been him and Emily, young and in love, believing they could overcome anything together. "I've been offered a position in our Portland office," Marcus said suddenly. "I've been considering taking it." "Running away won't resolve your guilt," Dr. Lynn replied. "No, but staying here." He gestured vaguely. "Every street, every restaurant, every corner of this city is haunted by what I did, what we lost. Maybe distance would help us both heal." His voice cracked at the word lost, and for a moment he didn't trust himself to continue. The image of Emily clutching her belly, the wreckage of the crash, the silence that followed, it played behind his eyes in a painful loop. Dr. Lynn let the silence stretch, giving him space to sit with his words. Finally, she spoke. "What would you say to Emily if she were here right now?" The question hit him like a physical blow. "I'd tell her." His voice wavered. "I'd tell her that I'm sorry. Sorry I couldn't be the man she deserved, that our baby deserved, that I hope someday she finds the happiness I stole from her." His throat tightened, and he blinked hard against the sting in his eyes. The words weren't just apologies, they were confessions, admissions that the version of himself she had loved had disappeared long before she knew it. "And what would you say to yourself?" Marcus looked down at his wedding ring finger, still bearing the pale impression of the band, though it was long gone. That it's time to stop punishing myself and start becoming someone worth forgiving. There was no redemption to be found in guilt alone. He was beginning to understand that now. Healing had to be chosen, pursued, earned. As the session ended, Marcus stepped out into the rain, letting it wash over him. His phone showed an email from his lawyer. Final documentation needed for the asset division. Soon, the last official ties between him and Emily would be severed, leaving only memories and regret as testament to their shared history. The victory in the medical malpractice case came unexpectedly on a crisp March morning. Emily stood on the courthouse steps watching her client embrace her children, tears of relief streaming down their faces. Beside her, Daniel beamed with quiet satisfaction, his suit jacket draped over one arm in the warming spring air. "First big win back," he said, glancing at her with undisguised admiration. "How does it feel?" Emily considered the question, surprised to find genuine joy bubbling beneath her professional exterior. "Like breathing again, like remembering who I used to be." She felt the weight inside her shift, no longer crushing, but grounding. The sense that she was not just returning, but redefining herself. "Drinks to celebrate?" Daniel suggested, then quickly added, "The whole team, of course. Christina mentioned wanting to toast your triumphant return." The hesitation must have shown on her face because Daniel stepped back slightly, maintaining the careful distance he always kept. "No pressure. Another time." "No," Emily found herself saying, the words surprising them both. "Actually, drinks sound good. It's been a while since I've had something to celebrate." Hours later, in a quiet corner of the Olympic Hotel's bar, Emily sat with Daniel after the rest of the team had departed. The historic building, once a courthouse, now housed one of Seattle's most elegant lounges. Soft jazz played in the background as they discussed their next cases. "You know what impressed me most about today?" Daniel said, swirling the ice in his whiskey. "The way you handled cross-examination. You weren't just attacking the defense's story, you were telling your client's truth." Emily smiled, touching her water glass. She hadn't touched alcohol since the accident. "Truth is all we really have in the end, even when it hurts." "Speaking of truth," Daniel hesitated, then continued, "I've been wanting to ask you something." Emily's chest tightened instinctively. "Emily, there's a legal conference in New York next month," he rushed on. 3 days of seminars on family law reform. I'm presenting a paper on custody rights. Would you consider coming as my co-presenter?" The invitation hung between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. Through the bar's towering windows, the city lights twinkled like stars fallen to earth. "I don't know if I'm ready," Emily admitted, her fingers tracing patterns on the condensation of her glass, "for any of this." "It's just a conference," Daniel said softly, though they both knew it wasn't. "But I understand if it's too soon." A text message illuminated her phone, Marcus's name appearing briefly. The divorce was final now, the papers signed and filed. She turned the phone face down. "Tell me about your paper," she said finally, looking up to meet Daniel's patient gaze. As he outlined his research, Emily found herself drawn into the discussion, their legal minds sparking off each other. The evening stretched on, and she realized with a start that she'd gone an hour without thinking about the past. Later, as Daniel walked her to her car, their shoulders brushed accidentally. The contact sent an unexpected shiver through her. Not desire exactly, but possibility. The feeling both thrilled and terrified her. "About the conference," she said, reaching for her car door. "Send me the paper. Let me read it first." Daniel's smile was warm but contained, respecting the boundaries she needed. "I'll email it tonight." Driving home, Emily noticed the nursery door was open. She'd left it closed that morning. Standing in the doorway, she realized she could imagine the room as something else now, maybe an office or a library. The thought didn't feel like betrayal anymore. The Portland job offer sat unopened in Marcus's email inbox, a digital reminder of possible escape. He stared at it from his temporary apartment in Cambridge, the morning sun casting long shadows across his sparse furniture. Dr. Lin's words echoed in his mind. "Running away won't resolve your guilt." His therapy sessions had revealed patterns he'd never noticed before. How he sabotaged happiness when it felt too real. How his father's infidelity had shaped his own fears of commitment. The irony wasn't lost on him that he now understood these things only after destroying his marriage. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. His real estate agent stood outside, apologetic. "Mr. Turner, I'm so sorry, but there's been a mix-up with the showing times. Another agent is bringing their client in 10 minutes. "No problem," Marcus said, grabbing his jacket. "I needed coffee anyway." The spring air felt crisp as he walked toward his favorite cafe on Pine Street. He was so lost in thought that he almost missed the familiar figure ahead, Emily, walking out of a bookstore. His heart stuttered as he recognized Daniel Foster beside her, carrying a bag of books. Marcus froze, watching them talk. Emily's laugh carried on the breeze, a sound he hadn't heard in what felt like lifetimes. She looked different somehow, lighter. The weight of grief that had shadowed her features was lifting, replaced by something that looked disturbingly like hope. And that hope, the ease in her smile, the way she tilted her head when she spoke, pierced him deeper than any anger ever could. Before he could retreat, Emily turned and saw him. Their eyes met across the sidewalk, the moment stretching like pulled taffy. Daniel noticed the exchange, his posture shifting protectively toward Emily without being obvious about it. "Marcus," Emily said, her voice steady but distant. "Emily," he managed, "how are you?" "Good," she replied, and the worst part was that it sounded true. "The firm's keeping me busy." Her tone was polite, measured, the kind of tone you use with someone you've placed firmly in the past. An awkward silence descended. Daniel stepped forward, extending his hand professionally. "Daniel Foster. I don't believe we've met." Marcus shook his hand automatically, noting the quiet strength in the other man's grip. "Marcus Turner. I was just—" He gestured vaguely down the street. "We should go," Emily said to Daniel. "We'll be late for the meeting." As they turned to leave, Marcus found his voice again. "Emily, wait, could we talk? Just for a minute?" She hesitated, then nodded to Daniel, who squeezed her arm gently before walking ahead to give them privacy. "I'm taking the Portland position," Marcus said when they were alone. The words tumbled out before he could second-guess them. "I think it's better for both of us if I'm not here." Something flickered across Emily's face. Relief, regret, the complex tangle of emotions, grief, nostalgia, closure, rippled just beneath her composed expression. "When do you leave?" "End of the month. I'll have my lawyer handle the house sale." He paused, studying her face, committing it to memory. "Are you happy?" The question surprised them both. Emily considered it carefully before answering. "I'm learning to be. It's different than before, but yes, I think I'm getting there." Her answer wasn't an attempt to hurt or soothe. It was simply the truth. Marcus nodded, feeling something inside him shift and settle. "You deserve that. All of it." "So do you," she said softly, and he could hear the forgiveness she wasn't ready to voice explicitly. "Just maybe not here." They stood in silence for a moment, the morning crowd flowing around them like a river around stones. Finally, Emily spoke again. "Goodbye, Marcus." He watched her walk away toward Daniel, who waited at a respectful distance. The Portland job offer no longer felt like running away. It felt like giving them both space to heal. Back in his apartment, Marcus opened his laptop and clicked "Accept" on the job offer. As he typed his response, no word. He noticed his wedding ring was still in his desk drawer. It was time to pack that away too, along with the rest of his old life. New York hummed with its characteristic energy as Emily stood at the window of her hotel room, watching the sunset paint the Manhattan skyline in shades of gold and pink. The legal conference had drawn hundreds of attorneys from across the country, filling the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel with animated discussions about family law reform. Her presentation with Daniel was scheduled for tomorrow morning. Their paper on reforming custody laws had already generated buzz among the attendees, and several prominent legal journals had requested advanced copies. But it wasn't the professional recognition that occupied her thoughts. A knock at her door interrupted her reflection. Daniel stood outside, case files in hand, his conference badge still hanging around his neck. "Ready for our final review?" They had fallen into an easy routine over the past few months, spending evenings preparing for the conference. Each session was filled with intellectual discourse that occasionally veered into personal territory, building a foundation of trust neither had expected. "Actually," Emily said, grabbing her coat, "I think we need a break." Want to take a walk? They found themselves in Central Park as dusk settled, the spring air carrying the promise of warmer days ahead. Street performers packed up their instruments while joggers made their final loops around the reservoir. I got a message from Marcus's lawyer today, Emily said, breaking their comfortable silence. The house sold above asking price. Daniel's stride matched hers perfectly as they walked. How do you feel about that? Strangely peaceful, she admitted. It's like the final page of a chapter. After closing, I heard he's already in Portland. They stopped at Bethesda Fountain, its angel statue silhouetted against the darkening sky. A young couple nearby posed for engagement photos, their joy palpable in the evening air. You know, Emily continued, watching the couple, I used to think healing meant forgetting. Moving on meant leaving everything behind. But that's not it at all, is it? Daniel leaned against the fountain's edge, his expression thoughtful. What is it then? It's about integration, learning to carry the past without being crushed by it. She turned to face him fully. When I lost the baby, I thought I'd never feel whole again. But standing here now, I realize being whole doesn't mean being the same as before. Emily, Daniel started, his voice soft with understanding. Let me finish, Emily said gently. These past months, working with you, I've remembered who I am beyond my losses. You never treated me like I was broken, but you also never rushed me to be fixed. Her voice trembled slightly, but she didn't falter. These weren't just words. They were truths she'd earned through quiet resilience. Through each morning she'd pulled herself out of bed, through every file she'd reopened at her desk. A street musician began playing somewhere nearby, the melody of Moon River floating through the evening air. Daniel stepped closer, careful to maintain the space that had defined their relationship. Dance with me? He asked, extending his hand. Emily looked at his offered hand, remembering all the time she'd held back, afraid of betraying her past or risking her future. But now, in the gathering darkness of Central Park, with the music playing and the city lights twinkling, she made a choice. She took his hand. They swayed gently to the music, their movement more of a shuffle than a proper dance. Other parkgoers passed by, some smiling at the impromptu moment. For the first time in a long while, she didn't wonder who might be watching or what it all meant. It simply was, and that was enough. Tomorrow, Daniel said softly, after the presentation, would you have dinner with me? Not as colleagues. Emily felt the familiar flutter of anxiety, but it was different now, anticipation rather than fear. Yes, she answered, surprising herself with how right it felt. I'd like that. Her voice was light, but firm, grounded in a newfound sense of her own readiness. Not for a new life, but for a fuller one. As they walked back to the hotel, preparing for tomorrow's presentation, Emily realized something fundamental had shifted. The weight of her past hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something she could carry while still moving forward. She was ready for whatever came next. Seattle greeted Marcus with its characteristic rain, a constant drizzle that seemed to wash everything clean. From his new office, on the 32nd floor of a downtown high-rise, he watched ferries cross Elliott Bay, their paths cutting white lines through the gray water. 3 months had passed since he'd left Boston, each day bringing small steps toward redemption. The notification from his real estate agent about the Boston house hadn't surprised him, but seeing the final paperwork had stirred unexpected emotions. He'd signed the documents digitally, remembering the day they'd first walked through that front door, Emily's eyes lighting up at the possibility of raising a family there. Mr. Turner, his assistant's voice interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Warner is here for your appointment. His new therapist, a recommendation from Dr. Lin, waited in the small conference room. They'd been meeting weekly since his arrival in Seattle, continuing the work he'd started in Boston. How are you settling in? Dr. Warner asked, her Seattle Seahawks mug a stark reminder of how far he'd come from New England. The team here is different, Marcus replied, loosening his tie. More collaborative. I'm learning to trust myself in ways I couldn't before. And the dreams? Marcus smiled faintly. They've changed. The nursery isn't endless anymore. Sometimes I can reach the crib now, but it's empty. Not in a devastating way, more like acceptance. Dr. Warner nodded encouragingly. You mentioned wanting to discuss something specific today? I saw the announcement in the Seattle Legal Journal, Marcus said quietly. Emily and her colleague won the Palmer case. Their paper on family law reform is being published next month. How did that make you feel? Marcus considered the question carefully, remembering his glimpse of Emily with Daniel on that Boston street. Proud of her, he answered honestly, and grateful. Grateful that she found her way back to herself, that my actions didn't destroy her capacity for happiness. He paused, collecting his thoughts. I used to think I needed her forgiveness to move forward. Now, I understand that what I really needed was to forgive myself. Through the window, the afternoon sun briefly broke through the clouds, sending shafts of light across the Sound. A container ship moved slowly toward the horizon, carrying its cargo to distant shores. I've been volunteering at a grief counseling center, Marcus continued, working with fathers who've lost children. It doesn't erase what happened, but maybe it gives some meaning to our loss. Dr. Warner set down her mug. That's a significant step, Marcus. How does it feel to share your story with others? Like setting down a weight I didn't know I was carrying. These men, they're where I was a year ago, drowning in guilt and grief. Showing them there's a path forward. It helps me remember how far I've come. His phone buzzed, a message from his team about an upcoming project. The familiar surge of anxiety about disappointing others didn't come. Instead, he felt steady, grounded in who he was becoming. I'm thinking of buying a place here, he said. Something small, near the water. A fresh start. Not running away anymore? No. Marcus smiled, remembering Dr. Lin's words. Running towards something instead, the person I want to be. As their session ended, Marcus walked to Pike Place Market, letting the city's energy wash over him. He bought coffee from a local stand, savoring the bitter warmth. A young family passed by, their child's laughter carrying on the breeze. The sound didn't pierce him like it used to. It simply existed, like the rain and the fairy horns, part of life's continuing symphony. 1 year after the accident, Emily stood in the empty nursery. For the last time, the walls had been repainted. A soft gray erasing the cheerful yellow that had once held so many dreams. The morning light streamed through the windows, creating patterns on the hardwood floors where a crib had once stood. Her phone chimed with a message from Daniel. He was on his way to help with the final moving boxes. Their relationship had grown naturally over the past 6 months, built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. He never tried to replace what she had lost, instead helping her create something entirely new. Together, they had learned to honor the past while not being bound by it, like slowly unfolding pages of a story still being written, without judgment, without rush. The doorbell rang, but instead of Daniel, Emily found a courier holding an envelope. Inside was a letter from Marcus, postmarked from Portland. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Even now, after everything, her breath caught. The weight of unspoken closure still heavy in her chest. Emily, I debated sending this, but some things need to be said, even if only once. I'm not asking for forgiveness. That's not why I'm writing. I wanted you to know that I understand now what I couldn't before. The Grief Counseling Center, where I volunteer, has taught me that healing isn't linear. Each person I meet carries their loss differently. Yet we all share the same truth, that love and loss shape us, but they don't define us. I heard about your legal reform initiative. Your work is changing lives, Emily. You always had that power, to take pain and transform it into purpose. It was one of the countless things I admired about you. I'm finding my way here in Portland. The rain has a way of washing things clean, giving them a chance to grow anew. I hope you're finding your path too, wherever it leads. Take care, Marcus. Emily sat on the stairs, letting the words settle around her. The letter didn't reopen old wounds. Instead, it felt like the final piece of a puzzle falling into place. There was no anger left, no sorrow that hadn't already been faced, only a quiet understanding that their chapter had truly closed. She took out her phone and typed a brief response. Thank you. Be well. The sound of Daniel's car pulling into the driveway brought her back to the present. He appeared in the doorway, his arms full of empty boxes, his smile warming when he saw her. Everything okay? He asked, noticing the letter in her hands. Yes, she replied, and meant it. Just saying goodbye. They worked together, packing the last remnants of her old life. The new condo they'd found overlooked Lake Union, its modern lines and open spaces representing the fresh start they both wanted. No more rooms filled with ghosts. No more waiting for a grief that had finally loosened its grip. In the kitchen, Emily found one last item, a small box containing the ultrasound picture she'd kept hidden away. She traced the fuzzy outline with her finger, remembering the joy it had once represented. After a moment's consideration, she'd placed it in her purse instead of a moving box. Not a keepsake of sorrow, but a thread in the tapestry of who she had become. Some memories deserve to be carried forward. "Ready?" Daniel asked, carrying the last box to his car. Emily took a final walk through the empty house. In each room, echoes of her past life lingered, dinner parties with friends, quiet Sunday mornings, dreams of a family. But they were just echoes now, not chains. Standing in the front doorway, she remembered another day exactly 1 year ago, when she'd rushed out of this same door, her world crumbling around her. Now she stood steady, changed, but not broken, carrying her experiences like hard-won wisdom. "Ready," she said, taking Daniel's offered hand. As they drove away, Emily watched her old house disappear in the rearview mirror. Ahead, the Seattle skyline rose against a bright blue sky, familiar yet somehow new. She thought of Marcus in Portland, hoping he'd found the peace he sought. Their paths, once so intertwined, now led in different directions, each carrying lessons learned from their shared journey. Life, she had learned, was not about forgetting or erasing the past, but about building something new from its foundations. Every ending carried the seeds of a beginning, if you were brave enough to plant them. So the story is over. Our wonderful friends, are you still here at this hour? If you are, then something about Emily and Marcus's journey must have touched your heart. Maybe it's the way pain echoed through silence, or how forgiveness found its form, not in reunion, but in release. And if you're still watching, still holding on to their story, then perhaps you too carry something quietly inside. A regret, a loss, a hope. This story isn't just about heartbreak. It's about transformation, about how people, even shattered by betrayal or grief, can gather their broken pieces and build something entirely new. As Viktor Frankl once said, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Emily didn't erase her past. She carried it forward with grace, allowing it to reshape who she was becoming. Marcus too faced himself, not to win her back, but to find peace within his own fractured soul. That's the real message here. Healing isn't about returning to who you were. It's about becoming someone new, someone softer, stronger, and more whole than before. Some wounds don't close the way we want them to, but even scarred, we can grow. So if you've ever asked yourself whether it's possible to breathe again after devastation, the answer is yes. Like Emily, you may not forget, but you can transform. And if this story moved you, even just a little, please give it a like. Share it with someone who might need this kind of reminder. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We have more stories coming. Stories of loss, growth, and love that doesn't always look like the fairy tale, but feels all the more real. Thank you for staying until the end. We'll see you in the next one.